Hello there, it's Valerie with another crochet chat. This week we're going to be talking about fleece, pattern cutouts for fleece, and working with burlap blanket yarn. So for most of this video, actually, you guys are going to be looking at my hands as I kind of show you how I use the patterns, how I make the patterns, these patterns, and how I work with the fleece to make it most successful and make the patterns look the best. So we'll cut to my hands. Alrighty, so the first thing I do is I start out with my patterns that I print out. And so here's the pattern for the stick horse, for the ear and the marking. And then here is the fleece cutouts for the baby panda, which I don't know if I've announced that I'm doing that yet, so shh, it's a secret. But it's something that I'm working on that's in the process. And so what I do is I have these patterns, and we're going to work on the horse for right now. And how I determine these shapes and the number of stitches, it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of process. I start with, at least for the ear, I start with making a crocheted ear, and then I, count the number of stitches, and then I try and make a shape that mimics it with the stitches in the spots that correlate. So it does take a little bit, but I think it's worth it in the end. So what you do is you go ahead and you cut out your shape. We're just going to do the ear for now. We won't worry about the blaze. So we have this. Now what we need is our fleece. So I got this like perfect for a unicorn fleece. I'm just in love with it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it here. Some fleeces have a very specific type of pattern, and it's good to kind of take that into account as you lay it out. Where this one's just kind of tie-dye, it doesn't matter quite so much. And then I take my fabric pins and pin it into place. I mean, you can do this however you want. I'm going to do 2 just to try and keep it nice and secure. And then usually with fabric scissors, you're going to go ahead and cut it out. I can't find my fabric scissors, so we're going to see how my paper scissors do. All right, they're not doing too bad. So you're just going to, as best as you can, follow the outside of the shape. And I try and stay pretty true to the edge. And you're just going to take your pins out. And that's what you have at the moment. Next step is to cut around just the outside edge of these dashes. You still want to be able to see them, but you don't want so much of an edge that your dashes are too close to this edge when you mark them on the fleece. So you don't have to be perfect. But you do need to be able to see where these markings go. Okay. So just like that. So the next thing we do is we take the fleece and we flip it to the back side. And we place the marking right there. Then you're going to take a fine tipped marker and you're just going to make a light mark where each of these dashes are. And if, as you kind of come around, like it seems like maybe this is a little too close to the edge, it's okay to bump it up just a smidge and mark it where it kind of feels right, you know, the sort of distance that you want to have. It's just a micro adjustment and it shouldn't affect anything negatively. So I think this next part is often what is challenging for a lot of people, is making the snips in the fleece. So I have these little scissors. I think they're makeup scissors, maybe for like shaping your eyebrows. I don't know. I crochet more than I do makeup, so yeah. But the nice thing about these is that they have incredibly sharp little tips. And so you want to make the smallest snip possible that still cuts through both sides of the fleece. And you're just going to go through it and just make a tiny, tiny cut. If you don't have, like some people just have really nice sewing scissors that are going to have sharp tips, and you can use those. If you don't, if you just have normal scissors like this, you usually back here is going to be sharper than the tips. And so what you can do is you can go ahead and just put it right in here and do a little tiny incision. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to control. Like that time I didn't quite do enough, you know, but I've done this before when I've lost my little scissors and I've made way too big of an incision. So anytime you can use small sharp ones, it's going to be easier, but it is doable with, you know, full-sized scissors, just working really carefully. So I just went ahead and finished up cutting all the holes. So what you do next is you take your crocheted piece, you're going to pull your hook out and you're going to switch to a 5mm hook. And I do this because the head size between a 8 and a 5mm hook is pretty significant, and you don't want the fleece to get stretched out, and the 5mm has a much easier time going through than the 8 will, and it's also going to be less likely to like tear between maybe two cuts that you made. So you're going to go ahead and put your crochet hook in there. And you're just going to line up your stitches as best you can. So the next hole, you know, the next stitch would go into here and it's going to go in here. And so all you do is put your crochet hook through the hole, put it through the stitch, or in the fleece, yarn over, making a stitch. In this particular pattern, in the next one, we go ahead and do an increasing stitch. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we'll put 2. And then you just keep crocheting around, going through a stitch. Oh, please tell me I made a hole there. There we go. And through a hole in the fleece. So you can see this is what it's looking like as we go along. So in this one, it's still a work in progress. So I don't think that I quite have my ear fleece proportions exactly perfect. So, you know, it's something that I'll still work on, but I'm close. I need to work on how this is finessed at the top. But it's pretty close. So that's one way that I work with fleece. The other way that I work with fleece is I do the same thing. This is just a remnant from an old project that didn't work out. But on this, or on like the feet and the arms, what I do is I insert my hook through the fleece. I prepare it the same way as mentioned before. Then go ahead and pull it through. Then I chain one, and then I just work through the holes that I've made in the fleece. And I crochet around the shape. You know, once again using the 5mm hook because it goes, or sorry, 5.5, because it fits best in the snips made in the fleece. And so you just crochet around like this. And so that's how you end up getting the fleece on the hands and feet. So for an example, Mr. Panda here, let's give you some scale on how big of small the things we've been working on. You know, but that's how I made the hands here. And also that's how I do the feet, is I just work in it and then I build up the rows as I go. Then the third way that I use fleece is for direct sewing onto the face. And I think I only have it on 2 projects so far, you know, but it is the panda where you cut out the eye markings and you sew it directly onto the face of the panda. And then the other one is the stick horse where you have the blaze. So there you have it. That's kind of the extended lesson on how I've developed my patterns, how I crochet into fleece, and how I make it work for me. If you haven't seen the first crochet chat that I did on fleece, it would also be informative to look into, because you'll see in the ear that we just made, I'm not using as high of a quality of fleece, and you can see how big those holes are, and how kind of it's tearing through a little bit. Even though I was working really hard to make really small snips, quality of fleece does play a pretty big part in that, especially when you compare that to this. You know, it's not ripping hardly at all. This is a pretty high quality fleece. And this one actually I have, I've worked in and ripped out and started working into again, and it's still holding up really, really well. So if you haven't checked out that, that crochet chat, go ahead and do that. It's pretty informative. Anyway, comment below, let me know if this was helpful, what other kind of crochet chats you guys would like to see, as far as me kind of describing the process and talking about different materials or components that go into designing amigurumi. So have a lovely day, and I will talk to you later.